So my stepdaughter. I've always tried to have a relationship with her one way or the other, but it came to a boiling point, and every single year, she just pushes me out of her life. Well, I have some groundbreaking news to tell you about our relationship, and it all starts with her wedding day. Hello all. Forgive me if this post is a little long-winded. I'm not used to the format on the website, so please just give me a little bit of grace when reading. I've been reading these submissions for years now, but this first time I've posted one myself, but I couldn't think of anyone in my life who I could talk about this with. I'm a 55-year-old male with 3 bio children and 1 stepdaughter. My stepdaughter Liz is 32, and last year she became engaged to marry her fiancé. I've never been close with my stepdaughter, even before I married her mother. She was 4 when we first met, and at first I thought that it was just a regular child's aversion to a new man in the mother's life. But she never grew out of hating me. As she grew older, she began to try to convince her mother to leave me often. She seemed to think that I used my money and success to lure her mother into marriage. While I do run a successful business, her mother and I have been friends for a very long time. Before we engaged in a romantic relationship, and it bothers me that she would think so little of her mother, as to assume she was the type of woman who could be swayed by money. But that's not really any of my business. It never really felt like it was my place to discipline Liz, as her father was still very much in the picture, and he didn't like it when I tried to be the father figure towards his daughter. He was never married to Liz's mother, never even in a relationship with her, so I think he felt inadequate as a father in that respect. I didn't want to step on any toes there, so I just kept myself out of it. This was easy enough when Liz was young, but her teenage years definitely put a strain on my marriage. When she was a child, her hatred was just relatively passive. But once she got older, she began to actively try to drive my wife and I apart. She would tell her mother that I made her uncomfortable, that I hit her, that I yelled at her when we were alone, all sorts of things, everything she could think of to potentially break up our marriage. Thankfully, my wife was wise to her tactics and didn't believe her. She knew exactly what kind of person her daughter was, and she knew what kind of person I was. After those specific tactics failed to sway her, Liz began to spread misinformation about me in the community. She would tell anyone who would listen how abusive I was. Though I largely kept myself to myself when she was around, I rarely even spoke to her unless it was just in passing. She'd often blow up on me, and again, I didn't feel comfortable disciplining her. Her mother tried to put a stop to it, but it only really stopped when Liz went off to city for college. I don't like to admit it, but our lives were so much easier when she was finally gone. I love my stepdaughter, but I find it hard to spend time with her, just because of the vicious way she's hated me since we met. Family life was much more peaceful when it was just me and my wife and our other 3 children. Even my business was doing better because kids weren't going home to their parents and telling them the lies that Liz had spread about me. I had one parent threaten to call the cops on me for hitting Liz, until my wife explained the exact situation to him, and even then he always looked at me with suspicion ever since. Now, all the kids are grown up, and Liz is working in the city as an assistant to some big tech. It's a successful startup. She isn't happy with her job and feels like she's failed in life for still being an assistant at her age. My other 3 kids are all younger than her, and they're all very successful in all their fields. They're all making a considerably more amount of money than Liz is. This is a big point of contention between the 4 of them, because she's very jealous that what they're doing is better than her, and she believes that I use my business connections to help them out. This is absolutely false, and I've always held the belief that children need to make their own way in the world, and wouldn't even do so if my kids had asked me to, which they didn't. A colleague of mine has a son who works in the same building as her, and I've heard that apparently she spends a lot of time trash-talking about me and her siblings to anyone and everyone who will listen. Well, I can honestly say this hurts, but honesty isn't much of a surprise. I think she forgets that my wealth is the reason she has no student loans, but I'm also not the type of person to bring that thing up like an argument. I try to be understanding of her the best that I can. Our relationship has become even more strained in the past few months because unfortunately my wife passed away about 6 months ago to heart failure. Liz took this very hard, of course. She has always been close to her mother, and I don't think she has any close friends to support her through this. My wife always said that she wished Liz had more friends, and that it was a shame that she only socialized with her fiancé. I've tried my hardest to do right by her during this time. I offered to pay her rent for a few months until she managed to get back to work. She had to deal with the bad depression after her mother died, and she struggled to get out of the bed most of the days. Well, she accepted my offer. But that I heard from my colleague that she was telling people I was trying to buy her affection, and that I should have spent the money on treatment for her mother. Obviously, this hurt me a lot, especially because I was just trying to do the right thing and support her the way my wife would have wanted. There's an extra layer of resentment in me towards her for saying the word she said, because my wife ended up dying in a private hospital, in a private room with the country's top cardiac experts trying their best to save her. All on my dime. I even put Liz in a hotel nearby so that she could be with her mother while she was ill. Even when we were told my wife was terminal, I spared no expense on making her as comfortable as possible. I do think I feel some level of resentment towards Liz, and I've tried to put this resentment to bed, as I don't think it's right for me to harbor any grudges against her. But it's proven harder than I'd hoped. She had a hard life, and her bio father, that was never a good father to her, he insisted that I take a backseat role in parenting his daughter, and then pretty much neglected her. My wife was pretty much a single parent in Liz's life, and even though I was there and willing to step in, it's not right to resent someone for things they said and did in the past. Especially as a child, we've all done incredibly foolish things, and no one in the world would have a good relationship with their parents if the teenage years were taken to heart. But it's everything she did after that that's giving me issues. Even my biological children were monsters from 11 to 17, but they all eventually grew out of it. And now we have a great relationship. Liz never stopped talking trash about me, which I was used and didn't take to heart. But the fact that she discredits her siblings' achievements so easily by saying I helped them all along, that's what bothers me. She always felt that I favor my own children, and I'm not saying that isn't true to an extent. My biological children haven't spent the last 28 years hating me, have they? So I'll admit that I probably have a bias towards them. But it's not because they share my DNA. I married my wife with every intention of being a father figure to Liz. I read books about even being a step-parent. I tried to take an interest in her hobbies, but I was rebuffed at every turn. Again, I can understand this. My own mom remarried when I was 15, and I had a difficult relationship with my own stepfather. When I married my wife, I made a promise to myself that I would be a darn good stepfather, and would not have the same relationship with Liz as I had with mine. But all my efforts proved futile. It isn't even the animosity between her and I, it's the hatred she has for her own siblings that upset me the most. She hates them just because they share my blood, and ignored the fact that they came from her mother too. My youngest, Sarah, she's the spitting image of her mom, so much so that it sometimes hurts to look at her and see my deceased wife. What I don't understand is how Liz can see her own mom's double and continue to despise her. I think it shows a determination in her to hate like she wants to, not like it happened organically from a difference in opinion or contrasting personalities. I think if Liz gave Sarah half a chance, they'd be very close, because they are very similar in temperament, and Sarah has always idolized her big sister. I haven't spoken to Liz for a month or two now. She's pretty much ceased all contact when I told her that I would not be paying rent any longer after I found out what she's been saying about me and her siblings. I heard through the grapevine that her wedding date has been set for 2 months from now. I mean, I'm happy for her, and I was content to stay out of her life, both for her sake and for mine. But today, I actually got a phone call from Liz. I was so shocked to hear her voice on the phone, I just about nearly dropped in surprise. She was speaking very softly, and I don't think I've heard her use that tone of voice with me in her entire life. She apologized for the way that she's treated me as a child, and told me that she knew her mom would want us to reconcile. She did not apologize for what she said just a few months ago, but didn't want to be the one to bring that up. So, I stayed quiet through the entire call. I think I said about 6 words altogether throughout the 10-minute phone call. She asked me if I would come to the wedding, and said that it would mean the world to her if I came. I was expecting an invitation in the mail, let alone a personal one over the phone. I just stammered that I'd think about it and put the phone down. In hindsight, it probably wasn't the best reaction, but honestly, I was about this set with the idea that I'd never speak to her again. I feel guilty for being weary of the offer, but at the same time, she's never given me any indication that she wanted me there, or anywhere near her. We spend holidays together out of a shared love for her mother, but this Christmas past, she spent it with her fiancé's family, and I was with my other 3 children. She didn't even respond to my text wishing her a happy holiday. So, why would she want me at her wedding? Out of remaining loyalty for my wife, obviously, I want a good relationship with her. She's always wished that we were closer, and I would always do my best to facilitate it, but she was just never open to it. I also feel bad for her suspecting an ulterior motive behind this, but honestly, I just can't see why she would even want me there. When she first got engaged last year, she made a point of telling me that her mother, that neither me nor her siblings would be invited. Well, this broke her mom's heart, of course, but there was nothing much that she could do about it, and after all, she's done this dance before, many times. We were all expressively prohibited from coming to her graduation ceremony, and I wasn't even allowed to attend dance recitals when she was younger and doing ballet. I can't talk to anyone about this because I know that my biological children hold a certain resentment towards their bigger sister for never liking them. And I know for a fact that none of them have been or will be getting invited. I don't want to cause more stress on them than already after their mother passed, so talking it through is out of the question with them. I used to have a pretty tight-knit group of friends, drinking buddies, maybe you call them. We all met in college and stayed close ever since, but ever since my wife passed, I'm afraid I'd rather isolate myself. I haven't seen them in weeks, and going to the bar on a Friday night just doesn't have the same appeal it used to. I've been a bit bogged down in grief, to be honest, and though they've tried their best to reach out, it's hard to talk to someone who doesn't want to talk back. Before, I'd have happily asked them for advice, but the only person who I want to speak to now is gone. My wife's death hit the family hard, and I'll admit that I haven't been as present for any of my kids as I should have been. But I doubt that Liz wants me to be her father right now. I just don't believe she really wants me there, and that leads me to wonder what exactly she's hoping to gain from inviting me. Maybe she's hoping that I'll use my connections to get her a better job like she thinks I did for her siblings. Or maybe she wants to impress her in-laws with all my success. Either way, I don't trust her. And I think that's the part that hurts the most, because when she speaks, I hear her mom. And that voice has been nothing but comfort for me for the past 28 years. And now it's the source of my anxiety. Again, sorry if this post is long. I tried my best to keep it short, but I think I ended up just pouring all my pent-up emotions out onto the page. Responses would be greatly appreciated because I'm kind of battling blind here and have no idea what my next steps should be. What's up, guys? Mr. Reddito here. I hope you're having a great day. This story has quite a few updates. Update number 1 takes place just a few days since the first post, and here it is. Hey everybody, it's been a few days since I've posted, and I want to thank everyone for their kind words and their condolences on my loss. Based on the advice of some people here, I called Liz up and accepted her invitation to the wedding. You guys told me that I shouldn't let bad blood come between my family, and you're right. I'm the adult in the relationship, and I always will be. No matter how old she gets, I lost sight of that. It's what my wife would have wanted anyways, and I called her the day before yesterday. When I accepted the invitation, she let off a big sigh, as if she's been nervous waiting for me. It felt good not to let her down. It sort of felt like we were healing in our relationship. Now, I'm counting my chickens not just yet. I'm still weary of her exact reasoning for inviting me, but I'm choosing to trust her. I don't see how she could have any, nefarious plans. And plus, I need to stop thinking of her as some evil mastermind genius. And remember that she's just a girl who lost her mother. I've lost sight of her own grief and mine, I guess, and that's not fair. My wife never got along with Liz's bio father, so I guess having me there will be like an extension of her mother, and I respect that. I asked her for one thing in return, and that was that she would invite her siblings. That's when she got quiet on the phone after that, and I thought that maybe I've blown my chance, but she eventually agreed. Now, I've had all three of them call me up excited that she called them personally, and I don't have the heart to tell them that it was my doing. It just goes to show that any resentment towards her of their part was just a reaction to her own dislike for them. Deep down, I always knew that they just wanted their big sister to like them. I remember when she was a teen and they'd congregate outside her bedroom door in hopes that she'd spend just a little time, but she never wanted to. I feel a lightness in me that I haven't felt in a few years. I hate to say it, but maybe some good has come from my wife's passing. I know that she'd be glad, if anything, it brought the family back together. Update number 2. The wedding's tomorrow. I'm a little nervous, I can't lie. It's my first big event since my wife passed, and my first without my +1. I'm nervous to meet Liz's fiancé's family too. I'm sure Liz has told them lots of awful things about me and her siblings, but I'm trying to move past that. It's going to be difficult to be in a room full of people and know that most of them have a picture of me that I wouldn't necessarily agree with. But there's nothing I can do about it now. All I can do is show up and support my stepdaughter. I'm glad that I managed to talk to Liz into inviting her siblings, because I really don't know how I would survive this thing alone. It hurts a little to hear my kids talk so excitedly about her big sister inviting them, how happy they are, when I know it's my doing and she didn't invite them by choice. My girls have been talking about it for a straight month, and they brought me out specifically to get a new suit. They've been texting Liz nonstop, and my son's less excited. He's not into weddings, that was my girl's thing, but I know he's secretly very pleased to have been invited. I don't think any of them have seen Liz since their mother's funeral. I've asked her to not mention to them that I was the one who insisted on them being invited, and she agreed. I'm going to have an early night. I know things are going to be really busy in the morning, just wanted an update quickly on everybody, on how things are going. Thank you again. What's up guys, Mr. Reddito here. So update 3 takes place just a few days after the wedding. I hope you guys are enjoying the story so far. Let's jump into update 3. I finally managed to gather my thoughts enough to tell you guys how everything went. As a few of you predicted, everything did not go exactly to plan. It started great, we arrived at the venue in plenty of time, and I even got to see some of my in-laws. Liz is pretty close with her mom's family, and it was great to see them all again, especially at a happy occasion like a wedding rather than a funeral. I even got to meet some of Liz's fiancé's family members, and they were all great. If Liz had trash-talked me to them, they didn't give any indication of it. They were gracious and kind. With about 30 minutes until the service has scheduled to begin, I was in my seat, ready. I was getting a little choked up, to be honest. I didn't raise the girl, but I still watched her grow. And it made me emotional to know that she was getting married. Sure, we had a lot of difficulties, but we still had some good times, on the odd occasion. When she forgot to hate me, that is. I was sitting in the middle along with my other kids, which didn't bother me so much. I hadn't expected to be in the front of the row besides the family. Even I wasn't hopeful enough that she'd go as far as that, but I was glad that I wasn't shoved to the back where no one would be able to see me, and she could pretend that I wasn't even there. So, it was 30 minutes till she was scheduled to walk down that aisle, and I got a tap on my shoulder from a woman I did not recognize. She asked me to follow her, and not wanting to cause a fuss, I went with her. She was walking fast, and I struggled to keep up on my bad knee, but I did my best. She said that she was the maid of the honor, and she led me to the bridal suite where Liz was getting ready. This woman did not explain why she called me out, but I figured that it must have been something pretty urgent to warrant Liz asking for my help. So, I just walked straight in. Liz was in tears, her makeup ruined, and she was sitting on the floor sobbing her heart out. I didn't know what to say. I haven't seen the girl cry since she broke her arm at the birthday party when she was 11, and I wasn't even allowed to ride in the ambulance with her that day. My instinct was just to hug her, like I would for any of my other kids, but this truce between us was still pretty tentative, and I didn't want to overstep any boundaries or do anything to upset her more. So I just stayed put and asked her what happened. Apparently, her bio dad had bailed about an hour ago, and everyone had been frantically searching for him ever since. I wasn't surprised. This man's a piece of crap and a deadbeat father. I wouldn't put it past him to do this or something even worse. I was still anxious, of course, but I walked over and gave her a pat on the shoulder, and I figured I should gauge her action on that, and I went in for a full hug. She just started crying even more, so I backed off. I was happy to be invited, but I'm under no illusions that she wants me to play the father. Once she calmed down a bit, I asked why he'd leave. Apparently, she tried asking him for money to help with the wedding because they've gone over the budget, and he's excused himself to the bathroom and just never came back. Liz looked at me a little pointedly when she said this part, and that's when the penny kinda dropped. She'd only invited me here as a backup father in case her first adoption scarpered. It felt like the world was falling around me, honestly, but I didn't say anything. She didn't ask me for money immediately. Instead, she asked me if I would walk her down the aisle and give her away in her bio dad's stead. This one flabbergasted me too, because I never would have seen that coming. The entire room full of Liz, her bridesmaids, the maids of honor, and my mother-in-law, her grandmother, were all looking at me expectantly, like saying yes was a no-brainer. Obviously, I said yes. It wasn't what I wanted, but I knew that it was the right thing to do at the moment. Liz's tears cleared up immediately like a switch, and she grinned at me. She actually said thanks, Dad. This was the first time in her life she's ever called me Dad, but I wasn't happy, not relieved or proud. I just felt like taking advantage of, to be honest. Once I agreed, I was rushed off to a spare suit, and they had a flurry of people around me blow-drying my hair, lint-rolling my suit. I was caught up in a flurry of everything. My mother-in-law came too, and she was smiling ear to ear. She said she was so glad I'd finally put my differences with Liz aside and acted like a real father after all these years. She said that she was glad that Liz was right about inviting me, just in case her real dad flaked. This is what made me snap. Really? To know that Liz had directly admitted to my mother-in-law that she only invited me as a backup, and that even after all this time, she was still trying to turn people against me and make them think that I favored my other kids more. It hurt. She was happy to make up lies and make me look bad, but once she needed me, I was her father. Honestly, it upset me a lot, because I've known deep down that she had an ulterior motive or inviting me, and it wasn't out of desire to reconnect for her mother's sake. But I pushed the suspicion down my throat out of hope. Now here I was, the backup dad getting primed and polished to walk her down the aisle when she never once thought of me as a father. I felt bad for my real kids who have been so excited to be invited as if it was an honor, and so happy that their big sister was trying to reconnect with them. But really, it was just all a ploy to get me there. Well, I had suspicion that once the wedding was over, Liz would be asking for money. Maybe she'd dare try it even during the daughter-father dance, while I again was just a placeholder for her real dad. I'm not proud of it, but I ghosted her. I left her hanging. I didn't walk her down the aisle, and as soon as it was time to meet her at the top, I just walked to my car and drove home. I sent my kids a quick text explaining the situation and turned off my phone. I bought a 6-pack of beer and sat in my underwear in the house that I'd helped raise her in. It's been a few days now, and I've only just turned my phone back on. As soon as it turned on green, I received so many text messages. The phone actually crashed for a few minutes. Most of them were from Liz. They ranged from insults to threats to emotional manipulation. She said I'd ruin her life and I let my wife down. I'd prove that I always liked my own kids better, and a whole load of more crass messages. I also had so many messages and mixed calls from my own kids. They were angry with me too and said I've embarrassed them. Even my mother-in-law had texted me and told me that my wife would not have been so happy with me. She isn't wrong. I know that my wife would be absolutely furious with me for what I've done, but I just can't bring myself to feel bad for it. I've known this girl since she was 4 years of age, and not once has she ever shown me any sign of affection, unless she needed something. I tried for years to be a father to her, and I was rebuffed at every turn. The only reason she invited me to the wedding was a potential substitute in case her dad flaked. Never once have I ever let that little girl down, but she's a grown woman now. It's not my job to put up with her fits and let her walk all over me. Her mother would be so disappointed in me for letting her down, but I'm at the stage in my life where I have to start standing up for myself and protecting my own peace. Well, I wanted to thank everyone again for all the support I've been getting throughout this entire drama. It was nice to have people to talk to for once, and I've gotten some really solid advice and emotional support, which is something I've not felt since my wife died. I probably won't make any more updates on this thread just because I'd like to move on from everything that's happened. I hope my kids can forgive me someday for letting their sister down in such a big way. But as far as I'm concerned, I don't want to have any more contact with Liz. She's pushed me away for so long in her life that it's time I finally got the message. Thanks again, everyone. Okay, so this was an absolute wild story. I can totally understand where OP was coming from when he decided to just ghost her, but I do want to ask you guys a little bit of your opinions. Do you think he went too far, not really to embarrass her, but maybe to embarrass his children who were there at the wedding? He did shoot them a courtesy text to let them know that he was dipping out, but guys, I would love to know your thoughts on it. In my opinion, I think this situation was totally difficult, but OP was 1000% being used. He was not looked at like the actual father figure, even though he tried to be his entire life. So no, I can't blame him for getting in his car and just saying whatever, turning off his phone and getting a 6-pack of beer. Guys, let me know your thoughts about that one. Drop the comments down below. Let me know your honest opinion. If you don't agree with me, that's totally cool, but let's talk about it in the comment section. Thank you once again for joining. Smash that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys in the next one.